I'm going to talk today on more of the operating side of the equation, some lessons learned from the last 5 years at Betterment on how we've scaled our technology, how we've scaled our team. I'll try my best to work some AI into the talk, but I didn't plan that ahead of time, so we'll see if I can do that toward the end. But what I thought I'd do is I'd go through some lessons learned, some things that I thought that we did really well from the beginning that paid dividends over that 4 to 5 year period of time, and some things we messed up along the way, some things that I think that we could have done better. So just quickly, I'd just like to ask, any Betterment customers in the audience? Thank you all for being customers. I'd just like to know how many we've got in the audience. Quickly, Betterment is the largest independent online financial advisor, founded in 2010. Currently, we have over $10 billion in assets under management and over 250,000 customers. A little bit about me. I joined the company 5 years ago-ish, coming up on 5 years in February. In 2013, there were 22 people in the company and 5 people on the engineering team. We had a product out in the wild. We had some number of customers. We had some assets, about 100x less in both cases than what we have now, and more. I joined as the VP of Engineering. Today, I am the COO. I'm still responsible for product design and engineering. I'm also responsible for a slightly larger piece of our business. Roughly 50% of the people in the company report to me now, and we're up around over 200 people in the company. So we've grown quite a bit. It's not a large company by any stretch. I still think about us as a startup, but just to give you some context on the next set of conversations. So what we got right, building some right foundations. And I'll caveat it up front. This is what worked for us. Everything I'm going to say, there's going to be an exception to this. The thing that worked well for us, building a monolithic application from the beginning. Not starting with services or microservices, not decomposing your problem domain immediately. It allowed us, in the very beginning, when we had very few engineers, and resources are even more strapped than they are now, and they're always constrained, but they were even more constrained then, we were able to move a hell of a lot faster. Deployments were coordinated, version control was baked in, pipelines were simpler to build. We had less to think about. We could delay solving distributed systems problems until we had more bandwidth to think about those things, and those weren't necessary yet. We had neither the system scale nor the team scale to mandate that we should think about these units of logic, these units of software independently. I also like it from the perspective of promoting, from a cultural perspective, full stack thinking in your product and your engineering organization. Everyone in the company, until some certain size, is directly connected to the customer. You own the experience or whatever you're building all the way through.
All of the different things.
There's a nice eddy current of skills, handoff,
out there, and you're going to hear a little bit later
that sense of I am responsible to the experience,
how they're thinking about
the customer
companies.
And is vital when you're
bridge
5,
that in the
6,
center
7,
and talk
10,
about
maybe
how to
20
think about
engineers
machine learning
and
from a strategic perspective.
And it gives you some time, which I think might be the most important piece, is to deeply understand a business domain.
Rendering of what
I might caveat this, build a monolith first.
My name's Matt Hartman.
Statement, if you were building a business you've already built before.
At Betaworks we do
if you know deeply what you're about to go into,
we make seed investments.
I don't know what your differentiation might be, but we didn't know this business as well as we know it today.
Technology platform
and so we deeply understand our business domain
developer,
now.
Which we
and what you get to do is you get to specialize your systems over time. And you can decompose that monolith with that understanding. I'm going to come back to this idea, and I'm going to tie it together with some things that we did around the team to actually drive this decomposition over a number of years.
Joining Betaworks, and for the last 4 years I've been investing in.
So going back to the early days of you got roughly 5 people in the organization, creating specialized teams doesn't really make sense. But you want to develop a sense of ownership and responsibility. You want people to feel responsible for the quality of certain aspects of a project or a build or your systems after the project ends. And so being very explicit about creating areas of ownership as you're building out your team, being very explicit about
mobile,
this.
We sort of started thinking about what's a post, how do we communicate in kind of a post-home screen world.
Was part
this
of
is
our
where machine learning is becoming even
aligning these areas of ownership with the business more so than the systems.
Generally are visual,
so assigning
augmented
clear
reality
ownership
and virtual
for
reality,
aspects of your
conversational
business.
software, so
An
messaging,
example might help in this.
whether it's
So
communicating
one of the pieces
inside
that
of
I
a-
like about
inside
this is
text
it
message or
continues to
inside
promote this
Slack
full
or
stack
Facebook
thinking
Messenger.
in your
And then
organization.
verbal
This
computing
isn't just an
and audio.
engineering
So that's
organization that I'm
anything
talking about.
from
This is everything that
podcasts
goes
to
into
Amazon
running a
Alexa skills.
certain part of your business,
The
but you
machine
start to
learning component of
decompose
this
aspects of your
is,
business based on
underneath,
those activities from the
augmented
business
reality
perspective. So
and
some
virtual
examples that
reality
might
is
be
computer vision.
simple. You
And
might
underneath
break apart
conversational
a
messaging and verbal
sign-up-oriented
computing audio
group
is natural
and a
language
tenured
processing
customer
and
group
speech generation.
because the needs
And
of
so these
those
are, when
phases
I'm
of the
thinking
customer life cycle
about
are
machine learning in
inherently
general, thinking about it
different.
as it applies
For
to
us, you might look at
specific
business units
startup
or
use
lines of
cases.
business and start to break apart
So I thought
ownership
I would talk
along
a bit
those
about,
lines.
how
Before
VCs think
technology's
about
really been
machine
pulled
learning just from a
apart,
strategic
before you can really
perspective
talk
from a
about
startup,
teams
how as
being
a startup
separate,
you
even
can
when
think
it's
about
such a
machine
small
learning
group
where-
of people,
where-
you can
what's-
take
what you can
individuals and
outsource
say,
entirely,
you're
what
responsible
makes
for
sense to keep
sign-up.
in-house, and then
And
what
you
maybe
can take
makes
a
sense
few
to not
people
even
and
pay attention
create
to.
that sense of
And
ownership.
then,
And what
if
you
we have time, I'll
get from
touch
that,
on the
and just
future of
to
some
put a
interesting,
finer point on it, it is not the
interesting
distinction of
sort of
you're the front end
frontier
and you're the back end.
applications of machine
Now
learning
you've just
that are,
disconnected one of those two
in a
groups
category
from the
that we're
customer.
calling
You've
synthetic
broken
media,
that full stack
which is both
thinking
sort of
too early.
interesting and
There
frightening.
will be a point of
So
scale
first, how
where you'll
VCs
have
think about
to,
machine learning.
more than likely,
this is
but
how
don't
I,
do it
at
too
least how
early.
one VC thinks about machine learning.
And so one of some of the pros of this
I'm,
approach
for the
from
most
my
part, in the last 4
perspective
years,
is it
I've working
develops
on the
deep
investment side
domain
of it. So we have a
expertise
venture capital
in
fund, and so
understanding
I
areas
spend
of
most
the
of my
business
time
and
on the venture
specializing
capital side.
those aspects
So
of the business.
this is sort
You're
of the
building
framework that I use.
responsibility in those individuals
the
for
prettiest,
aspects,
but
even
you have-
after
you have
something
data,
ships. This is a
you
real
have
problem
untrained
in a startup.
algorithms,
You
and when you
build
combine
something,
those
you
two
walk
things, you
away
end
from
up
it, you
with a
go
trained
work on
algorithm.
something else
And
completely
so
different.
the way that I
You
think
don't
about
know
this
that you should be
is,
responsible
on the
for the
data
care and
side,
feeding of
the
something
startup,
you
the
worked
company
on
should
a
ask
month ago.
themselves,
That something
is
is
the
going to
data
atrophy.
proprietary or is it
It's
not?
going
So
to start to fall
an
apart
example of
if
that
it's
might
not
be
looked after.
if you
So
have, if you're
this is
Google and you have
something
a
that
bunch
builds
of
that
search
mechanism
data
and that
and you want to
cultural
start to do
mandate
predictive
into your
data,
team.
predictive
Also
search,
provides
you
you
have
some
a
redundancy
big head
where you
start
need it,
on somebody who doesn't have that
but it
search
also
data.
provides you
If you're a
built-in
startup
mentorship
and you
and
are
leadership
trying to
as your
identify
team grows
X-rays,
because you're going to start
figuring out
to
if there's
specialize
there are
around
bones
these
that are
areas of
broken in a particular
ownership.
X-ray,
You're
you
actually
don't
going to
have a
start to
particular
create
disadvantage against
teams
Google because
around
they don't
this.
necessarily
You
have that
might
labeled
create
data set.
sign-up squads.
When we move on to
You might create
untrained
multiple
algorithms,
squads around your entire sign-up experience.
one question that we
at a
ask is, it
certain
open
scale.
source? And I'll talk,
And if you
on
look
some of
to
this,
your
I'll talk about this in
team
more
to
detail.
grow your
But
individuals
is the
on your early
untrained
team into
algorithm something
leadership
that you
roles
own?
over
Is it something
time,
that's proprietary
which I
from
would
like a
argue is
technology
something that you should
perspective?
try to do
Or is it
more than
really
50% of the
totally
time
open source and anyone
because
can get
they
it, and the
understand your
value is that
business
you're
and
adding your
customer
own
the
proprietary
best.
data,
You've
and
got
then that
built-in
comes
leadership
together
and
with the
mentorship
trained
from the
algorithm.
beginning. They know
And
that that's a part of the
the
path.
point I want to make on the
The
trained
breadth of your
algorithm
ownership and the breadth of your
is two
domain,
things. The first is who owns it.
expertise is a part
So
of career
in some
growth.
cases, you're going
So
to
that's a
be
big part about
using
building up a
SaaS
startup.
product,
Don't
and
pretend that anybody in a
you
startup
will be
isn't
training
interested
their
in their
product, and you're
career
just going to get the
long-term.
output.
You
In
need
other
to give them
cases,
some
you're going to be
sense
you
of
own the
how
trained
is this
algorithm, and it's really
benefiting me
important.
for the
And
long
so
term.
that's you don't want to give that up.
Ownership
So that's
before it
sort of how I
becomes
think about ownership.
team-oriented is a nice way to do
The
that.
second part of that is how much better
And
does it
also,
get as the
it gives
amount
you a
of
nice
data improves it? I
scaffolding
almost think like,
to
is
start
there an
hanging
asymptote
what I just talked about, career
that-
goals, as well as
is it
company
10 million
goals
data
off
points,
of it.
or is it like
So
50?
we're going to talk about
If you need
something
50
later,
data points to train
OKRs,
your
company
algorithm, then
goals,
someone
we're all
else can come
familiar
get the
with
50,
different
say,
frameworks
a
for
different
it.
50 data
But it's
points and
easy
catch
to
up
think
you.
about the
Another thing
sign-up.
to compare
I'll
that
keep going
trained
back to that
algorithm
one
to
because I think
is,
everybody that would be
what
building
about
an app needs
other
sign-up
mechanisms
users.
for solving the problem?
But
So
you could
if
think
you have
about
a
that
really, really
sign-up
good way to do face detection,
owner, and then
it
that
has to not
sign-up
only be better
squad
than
or team or pod,
it
however
has to
you
be
talk
better than
about
all
it,
of the other
owning
ways to
particular
do face
metrics
detection.
and
If it's
goals
only
for the business
1%
that drive
better,
your business.
does that matter?
And
so
those
like
can
the
turn into
consumer, in the
both
case of a consumer
business-oriented,
product or an enterprise
product-oriented,
customer,
and
can they tell the
technical-oriented
difference
goals.
using
And
your
that's a
trained
nice
algorithm
unifying
versus whether it's
scaffolding
stats
of my
products?
career is tied to this area
That's
of
kind of the
ownership.
framework we'll think about
I
how to
also
apply it in your
understand what my goals are relative to the companies. I know my impact
One one way
based
to
on the
think
things
about
that
the
I'm doing.
different
I know it's
types of
important.
machine learning is there's
So
true
now
computer
back
science
to the top.
algorithms. So 10
back
years
to how
ago,
to tie together this
neural network,
team-oriented
deep
push of
deep neural networks are
ownership,
sort of a buzzword now.
leadership,
10 years ago, those were in
and
colleges
business
being studied, and
full
that was a
stack
breakthrough
orientation
technology.
of how you
It then
specialize
went
your
to the
company
point where
as you
it was,
grow.
so that was
And
a
then how do
computer
you
science
start
algorithm idea.
specializing if
Then it
you
went
choose
to the point where it's the technology.
that
Some
stack
people started
that's
to implement
underneath.
it.
So
Then
along the way,
people started to
we
say,
didn't
let's
really
put it on
start thinking
GitHub,
about
let's make some open
services
source
until we had
versions of
about
this.
40 engineers
And then
on the team.
it moved
so
to the
that's
point,
just a
the
rough
third
number for
category, which
everybody in the
is
room. That doesn't mean
it's
that's
SaaS,
right for
it's
you.
SaaS APIs. So now there are people who say
thinking
we are deep
about
learning as a
orienting
service
towards
for
services
facial
on our
recognition,
technology
for topic
to
modeling,
align
for
with
a bunch
these
of different
business
categories.
units
And
or business
the
teams
natural
that we
state
had
of things is
created
that as
was
these
driven
things come out of
primarily
universities,
by
they take
team
a long
scale.
time and they eventually get to the
Not
point where they're SaaS
user
APIs.
scale,
And it's just important to keep in mind that
that's not 100% true. There were pockets of it, but the primary driver was at some scale,
as a machine learning company,
the number of people that you have working on something, the cost of coordinating those people is going to slow down productivity. If you have 50 people and they all have to be aware of what everybody else is doing to not step on each other inside of this monolith, you can keep the monolith and solve those problems differently.
If you
read a lot of Etsy's blog to find out how they solve those problems in a different way along the way, or you can start to break apart your teams and create team independence.
15 minutes,
and we oriented our servicing around team independence. And so the thing that I like to talk about here is you leverage an old hat computer science mythical man-month quote.
Second way to think about this.
Of leverage Conway's law. Conway's law says whatever design you have in your communication systems of your organization will be replicated in your technology.
I'm kind of dividing this into two categories, which is machine learning matters and machine learning doesn't matter as a core competency.
If you screw up the organization of your technology relative to the communication setup of your organization, you're going to feel
Warby
it.
Parker is a
So if people have to coordinate across team boundaries because there's a piece of a system that you decomposed earlier in the history of the company that doesn't quite match how your business actually ends up working, you just created a bottleneck.
If a competitor got their trained algorithm about like how to fix glasses to your face, I would argue that that is not the key differentiator.
So drive your system organization primarily. From our perspective, this worked really well. I'm sure there's an exception to this rule.
Because the
but
thing
it
that
worked really well for us. We drove how we think about systems out of how we think about our business. So we logically organize our services so that teams are fundamentally independent of each other.
Where are the cases where trained algorithms
everything within their vertical,
where more data equals better results?
They own the decisions.
And then there's not a near, I used this word earlier, not a near-term asymptote, meaning
thankfully you've built mechanisms for this collaboration and coordination
else to go grab that similar data and create the same
because you define the human side of this problem.
If you think about your
define
machine learning algorithm leaves your company, that's actually really bad. Right?
And so we were much more effective and efficient at doing
this. A company like
So
Clarify,
there's
which is going in, collecting data.
Like this.
They have a bunch of trained models to do things like tell you what's in an image. And if that were totally open source, you'd just stop paying for Clarify. And so that's
if you're going to decompose something that is a fundamental application,
I would do
core of your business,
walk
it's
through
a single application.
Just 3 examples of companies
pulling it apart
use machine learning in different
and
ways.
No single business driver is going to get you all the way to the end.
So
you need people.
Anchor is the first example. So this is an audio social network. Right now, it's the biggest audio social network.
You need to deeply understand.
They have a brand. The consumers go directly into the app. They have a network. The user-generated content, which originates inside of Anchor.
And I think,
I would argue, machine learning is a feature.
And with a little foresight,
they have a feature on there that actually has helped them grow
relative
a lot, where
to
you can
the need
record your audio
to
and then it renders
focus
it
on
as a
creating
video
value
with
for
the
our
audio in
customer,
the background, and then it shows the words.
paid dividends.
So
high ROI
they can use a SaaS
focusing on
API
decomposing incrementally and iteratively over time.
If they want to have
and solving team scale problems,
intent detection because they want to let you use it hands-free, they could use something like Lex.
And that was our choice.
It's not
that
a
was
key
the way
core
we wanted
competency.
about
It's okay to outsource.
So I'm not trying to make a case for services.
So my verdict is you don't need custom trained
machine
learning.
That's what worked for us.
You can use an outside API.
Cool.
The second example is a company that we built at Betterment called Giphy.
Betterment 1.0 was an application that was run on iron that we rented.
One of the most valuable things they have is, in addition to their brand, is the business development relationships.
Every system config was customized by somebody.
Chances are, if you're using Giphy, you're inside of a messenger app, and it just pulled in automatically, whether it's iMessage, Facebook, Twitter, inside of Slack.
Flex?
And so
yeah,
the problem that they might want to solve is making sure that when you do a search, you're finding the GIF that is the most relevant. So this is, in a way, a computer vision problem.
I thought that was a bad idea.
They can't necessarily.
We also had customized
they could pull up a
WordPress
sort of
installs
out-of-the-box
that
face
wouldn't
detection.
run
That's fine, but people aren't really searching
Basically,
for the word face.
We had
but they might be
bunch
searching.
of
I'll give you an example for the word touchdown.
Every system,
and if you think about what a touchdown is, you actually have to.
Had its
there's
own
not, I don't
unique
think,
way of
a
doing
company
things.
that has created a model for what a video of a touchdown looks like.
Abstraction
you can think, okay, well, there's a
problem
football in there. There's a helmet. There's a field. There's probably a goalpost. Maybe there's a lot of. It's sort of a fuzzy logic problem. And so that's the kind of thing that you can imagine taking labeling a bunch of GIFs and putting them through.
And so
I
think Matt talked about this fairly well.
Algorithm of choice and training that, and the output
your
is
moat
important,
is whatever differentiates you from the competition.
Absolutely critical. If someone else got that,
and we can talk about that in the business sense.
There was another search engine for.
But what I'm here to say is that you have to defend that moat all the way through the organization.
Brand and also the fact that
every single choice you make. you can waste a ton of time with an interesting piece of technology that doesn't provide you any differentiable value in the marketplace.
Custom-trained ML
and it can be an accident. And we've made that accident a couple of times. We've made that choice in a couple of places where, in hindsight, I would choose different technology. So there isn't really a rule of choose A over B.
A company called Uru.
The rule is build things that differentiate.
I'll just explain what this is for a second.
Borrow things. Grab the framework off the shelf that gives you the most for free. That does the most work for you.
So this is I took a screenshot of a video.
That work doesn't provide you any additional value in your business.
This is a ping pong
an interesting example, I go back to Backbone. We pulled Backbone off the shelf for those that are familiar with what it is. JavaScript framework, really interesting, very flexible. You can build some incredibly delightful experiences in it. It also doesn't have security best practices baked in for free.
The ping pong ball is actually on top of it.
Spent a ton of time trying to figure out how to do things securely with Backbone. Security is not going to differentiate my business.
So the reason I
got to do it well
is because the problem they are solving, the computer science
we do it exceptionally well, but we do it exceptionally well because we're going to rely on frameworks that have a lot of great best practices already built into it, so we don't have to do that work.
So
that's a simple example. The other one I might say is to bring AI into the conversation.
They use the machine learning
a little bit out of left field. Is that hey, if I'm thinking about using natural language processing because
pretty critical. If you picture them going to pitch a new company on this and somebody had their
and I want to understand what they're asking questions about. I'm not going to out-innovate Microsoft or Amazon or Google
you want to store
on speech
those,
recognition.
You want to
That's not my core.
Ownership
so if I go take wherever that chart was, the layer cake, if I go grab the AMIs off the shelf and I see that happening in the engineering team, we just made the wrong choice.
And a computer science PhD
because that's not where,
for this stuff.
Off the cuff, for what I know now, we're not going to differentiate our business on our innovation
more believable
around
this
speech
is actually
recognition.
a hard
We will
problem.
innovate in how we use it to drive our experience. But I don't think I should go pick the lowest level thing off the shelf. I want the highest level of abstraction. So that's more of a setting of principle
do this last,
and a very strong principle of no shiny objects, no snowflakes. Focus all of your energy maniacally on things that differentiate your business.
On synthetic media. So I said 10 years ago we had deep neural networks just starting to begin.
Unfortunately, sometimes this sounds boring.
Those are SaaS products now.
To certain members of the team,
and sort of plug right
that's your choice of how you want to set that tone.
So what are the things that are just now going from technology to kind of proprietary?
And now it's paying dividends, and we have a team that believes in this principle.
And by the way, neither of these things are
this is how they organize their thinking. And everybody that comes into the culture now doesn't question
this for you or not.
That doesn't mean we don't change our technology. We change it constantly.
So we'll see if I can. So this is a synthesized voice. So you open it up and you record your own voice.
Our business.
And you
so then back to scaling teams. At some point, you'll go from 10, you'll be successful.
And then it reads this out loud.
You'll start hiring like crazy.
So let's see if you can hear my
voice. You'll go from 10 people to 20 people, then to 100, then to 200 or so. And you'll figure out whatever old mechanism you used to have for aligning your company on the strategic objectives of the business breaks down.
And today
conversations don't work as well anymore. Maybe you're doing it from the beginning, which great, best practice. Make sure that you're using something like OKRs or whatever goal-oriented framework you want. All it is set a goal,
you can imagine what this means
something.
for sort of social engineering.
That's the
I can't actually think of very many good, positive use cases, but imagine.
And you'll want this.
But imagine
framework at some point
you get a phone call from somebody who sounds exactly like your best friend.
Business
and like,
tell
me all your secrets.
For the million operational decisions that are made daily relative to the few strategic decisions that are made.
But it's super interesting because one of the problems on the voice side, if you think about where we are right now.
And so you're going to go look for it. You're going to go grab OKRs or something similar because you read all the same blog posts we've all read, and we read them as well.
They're really good for
and the first time it didn't work out
like
very
the weather.
well.
I think I might be an outlier.
And then the second time we wrote them, it didn't work out very well. And neither did it the third
read
time.
by Siri at 2x speed.
And we keep trying with the framework.
People, I think, don't think
and maybe you're better at using this framework, or maybe you've already figured out the magic that we naively didn't understand, or maybe you're just better at writing these things than we are. Or you've had experience. We had no direct experience with doing this kind of stuff. For most of us in Betterment that are leading the organization, this is actually our first company.
There is actually audio for this, but I
so
didn't want to have to click all the way
we're figuring it out on
into
the
it,
fly,
on
but we're
YouTube.
learning fast. And the thing that we learned about
Barack
frameworks
Obama
like this,
faces
when you're talking
and
about these
smiles and
independent
mouth
teams
movements.
with their own areas of ownership,
go along with audio that he
is
actually
that you
recorded.
still have to be good at telling the whole
they
story.
watch the video of it,
So
they grab the
first
audio,
of all,
and
you
they
have to make
generated
sure that you're building
version
in a culture
Obama
of the
doing
whole
this.
is greater than any
combine those
part.
two things,
And
synthetic
that's
voice
just a cultural
and
mandate that we build from the beginning.
images.
But
And,
we naively
like, I think
expected
we're in a
that
totally
writing this
different
beautiful
category for
tree
fakeness.
of objectives with key
Like,
results
what's-
that
like,
ladder
what
down
truth is
to each
become
other
super
was going to
hard to tell.
inspire
Right
the
now it's
team
kind
as
of
well
hard.
to understand the real business context for the strategy
so I'm
that we
gonna
were
leave
trying
it there
to
for a
achieve. We
moment.
naively thought that the elegance
have
of this
questions?
framework was going to take some of the work off of our plate
so I'll leave it there. I'm Matt
for
Hartman.
inspiring our organization.
I have a newsletter on voice
selling the
interfaces
strategy,
specifically called
for doing what got us
hearingvoices.xyz,
to this
where
place
I
in
share
the
a bunch
first
of Alexa
place.
skills,
We were exciting
a bunch
our
of
team
types
from the
of
beginning. This was the
things
work
for,
we were
types of
doing,
products for
and so we went and
developers,
grabbed
things
this
like
framework
the,
off the shelf,
AWS layers
and
that
it didn't
Mackenzie was
work
talking
as
about
well.
earlier, as they come out
And
to
we
to
learned
help
that people
developers
actually don't
understand
like
where,
looking at
where the
metrics
new
every
speech
day.
APIs are going.
And they don't like running
and
while
then
they're
just
staring at their
industry news
toes.
in general.
You have to inspire with the long-term vision and mission. You as a founder, you as a early executive or a leader in one of these organizations have to inspire the team. And you have to build mechanisms for the other people in your organization to pick up that mandate.
But I would
that
like
need,
to suggest
that function of
that
leadership
should be
in the
corrected
organization.
to
No
the
framework's
data
going to do it
and
for
raw
you.
data,
So
because
the thing that I think we
algorithm
missed
defined as
naively was
setup
that
steps
we're not Amazon
for
or Google
instruction,
yet.
results
And the
in
reason that these tools work so well there is
kind of
because of the leaders
a
and the
conclusion
experience
or,
of the people
results
and the
in some
maturity
results.
of the organization
So I
as they're
think about the
applying them.
results as
For
not the
instance,
other way
I would like
around.
to say
And
raw
so
data
now,
is like number, integer, etc.
I'll talk about the last point in
But
a second.
when you
Now,
train
we
your
still
data,
use
it's not gonna
OKRs,
be raw
but it's
data
just the tool.
and can be used
It's just
in
the way we
algorithm
communicate the goals to the
to
teams, and so we
create
can
a
keep track
model
over time.
and
It is not
finally
the mechanism
get a
for sharing
solution.
business
Thank you.
context.
Yeah, so
It's
I
not the
totally
mechanism for
agree.
inspiration.
Should I grab this?
We've
I totally
built
agree
in
that,
procedures, processes,
So there's data, there's sort of
connection with
absolute
the
raw data, and
organization,
there's like
connection
tagged
back
data.
with the leaders
and then
in
there's
these
the output of
teams,
that data.
both in a macro
when I'm talking
sense
about
of once a year,
the reason I put
twice a
data
year,
into
but
one
also
category
very
is
incrementally
that
staying directly connected with the decisions of
from
these
a
people in
just
the organization
strategic
and
perspective,
helping them to understand
if you're
the
trying
larger
to get to
business
the point where you have a
context.
better result,
And I
the better result
share
comes from
that
the trained
as
model.
just an
The question is
example of
how,
as
to
you
me,
get
the
to a
question
certain
is,
size,
how hard is it for
sometimes the
someone
things that
else
got you there
to
won't get you
replicate
to
your
the next
results?
level.
Kind of doesn't matter how, right?
Sometimes
It
you
could
have
be
to
like a
remember the
one-line
things that got
heuristic.
you there in the first
Just like,
place.
if it's
And not
if,
go
you know,
grab
if
something off
this,
the
then
shelf
that,
and expect it's going to
and
solve
then you get
all
your
of your
output.
problems for leading
But
an organization.
To me,
So I still love the tool.
the source of
It's
the
just
data,
not a
how
panacea.
easy
The
it is for
last
other
thing that
people
I'll
to
say
access data
that
is
we've learned over
one of
time,
the
and it's the
inputs
last
that
bullet on
helps
the
train
previous slide,
the
is
algorithm.
know
So
how
I
you're
think
going to
I
know
think I
if
agree with
anything you're doing is working or not. It's not necessarily always a quantitative measure, but you should have a qualitative mechanism. Sometimes that's just an employee engagement survey. Sometimes that's making sure you're building in one-on-ones. Sometimes that's defect rates. Whatever it is, you need to know as you're making change, because change is constant. That is the only constant in any of these growing organizations. That the change that you're making is actually additive and improving.
I think we might agree to disagree
not.
that, like, if I take an open source neural network that I haven't trained and I haven't done anything, that is that's the algorithm.
Whether or not how we're changing
but I
the
think I hear
operations
you saying that
structure
it's
of
sort of
teams
it's nothing
is
until
improving productivity,
there's
improving
things flowing through it
engagement,
and to be able to
improving
generate something.
pace of
That's a fair point.
differentiation,
Another
or
question.
improving
Outside
creation
of
of
what we think of
customer
as
value.
a major voice,
Because those
Google
last two
Assistant,
things are the
Siri,
only things that
Alexa,
matter.
Is anyone doing a really good job
In the
with
end.
voice UI in an application that you've seen
So that's all
far?
I've got. I will open it up to questions. I guess I went faster than I thought I was going to.
There's a bunch of people who are
so,
doing
I think I thought I had 15 minutes. Not
interesting
30, so if there are
human-computer
any
interaction
questions, I'm happy
inside
to
of voice
take
user interfaces. So I think when you say outside of Alexa, I think about products built on top of Alexa.
That I understand
So I think there's a bunch of good Alexa skills and a bunch of kind
presentation.
of mediocre Alexa skills.
One of the slides
and
you
then
said
ones that you don't use at all. And one of the big things
focus
is whether
on
kind of
generalization.
two parts to it. One is in voice, one of the
then
problems
repeatable.
is growth is hard, but also retention is really hard. There's no home
my
screen to
understanding,
remind
this
you
is
to do a
kind
thing,
of
so you have to find triggers.
mathematical
So
model
for example,
recursion is correct.
a flash briefing is a is a really good trigger because you wake up in the morning and you say, okay, I'm going to get the
deeper
news.
than I was thinking about it.
I think I was talking to somebody recently who's a developer of.
It may be recursion in the organizational sense. It may be recursion in the technical sense. It wasn't meant to be one or the other.
Question of the day.
But if you see a pattern in multiple places, come up with one solution to that pattern or problem.
They're both very popular, but it was interesting to see the difference in retention when you just remind somebody to use the thing. So I almost include that as part of the human-computer interaction.
Anybody
in terms
else?
of products that are doing a good job of conversations back and forth, I think I use an email app called Astro,
and how did that
which
impact your company
has a bunch of features, but the one I use it for is that you can walk and talk to it and read your
KPIs
email.
very early on. We didn't have as fulsome a framework
good job
as kind
of saying, okay,
OKRs.
what are the types of responses that you might want to give? So it's like next email, when it goes from subject, you can read the whole thing. You can archive it. You can actually respond to the email itself. And I think they've done a good job of creating a really straightforward.
So to go to the first question of performance reviews, independent from business KPIs, individual performance reviews, very early, almost from inception.
But when you were talking about Giphy,
we've always had
and
individual
barriers to entry
performance reviews.
It
Those
seemed that it
goals
was more of a first
never
mover
been,
network advantage.
and this is another
rather
choice that
than
we've made as an
anything
organization.
else, because they had those
Our
relationships.
individual performance is
Is
not
there a
tied
differentiator
to
between
company KPIs.
what you see their barrier, their moat is
We all
versus
get
first
bonus
mover
based
advantage?
on the success of the company as a whole, but we don't try to tie that into your individual performance. Does that make sense?
Not entirely.
That was one of the things that we did in order to avoid some of the
super
downsides
and
of
in a
strict
category that
KPI
wasn't a
frameworks
category.
along with
people weren't like, oh, who's going to build the
company
first
culture
animated
perspective.
GIF search engine, right?
And I talked a little bit
so
about
I
how
agree with you that it
OKRs
they were
in this
early
fuller
and executed
sense
very well.
and really starting to rely maybe too much too soon
I am always
on
conflicted
such a
on whether the
fulsome
first mover
framework
advantage is a
to
thing.
guide decision
And
making
to me,
affected company culture.
my current state on it, and
it wasn't a good effect
is that
in the early stages.
the
So we had to
slower
come back to it
ramping
as
up time
a bit
is,
of a
the more
background
valuable
tool
the
as
first mover
opposed to
advantage
the
is,
foreground.
because
And
if you get ahead, it will
that's what I was
take
trying
other
to
people a long
communicate
time
on.
to
Make
move
sure
first.
you're still inspiring
But we're in
with
this
what you
stage
know
right now
and
where
love about
things
your
can
vision
grow
and
so
your mission
quickly,
and your
including
business.
Giphy, that it's like, just because somebody moved first.
Yes, hi.
I mean, look at like search engines, right? Google was the 14th
explain again
search
the
engine.
decision-making
It was
process
in a
between
way,
where
very
you
easy to
just
spin
grab
this up
something
because you
off
could
the
just tell
shelf
people about it.
versus
I mean,
investing
telling people about it's hard,
in that
but
expertise?
if people find out about it, they
The
can switch over
highest
to it. I think
level
we're seeing
decision
that
making is if
with
deep
social networks
investment in that
some ways,
area,
where
if
people
you
are willing to switch over, it turns out now
I'll
that
try
they
to
have a
think of a
contact list
better
and they can just
analogy.
press
If
OK
deep
and it
investment in a
connects them to all their
particular area
friends.
is
So
going to be a
I guess there's
differentiator
probably
of
a
your
piece of
business,
first mover advantage.
then
I'm
you
just
should
always hesitant
probably
to assign that
build
as a
versus buy,
reason.
if that's the distinction, right? Or you should go for high abstraction where you have the least amount of potential for differentiation.
This may be, this is a non-technical
An
question.
example
and
might
maybe
be-
a good segue to the next
I'll
segment.
try to pull one out of the
So looking
sign-up
at your slide
flow or the
for
sign-up
what is your
example.
moat, using that dichotomy, is that how VCs
Yeah, that might
determine
not be a
whether
good
or
one,
not
but let's give it a shot.
a particular startup is valuable or not? What are the
Depending on the
ways I should
volume
say?
of customers, it might make sense for you to build your own
It depends on what
landing
size
page
company
dynamic
you're
content
trying to
generator
build,
because
whether, how much
pace of
matters.
sign up and
So,
CPA and volume
at
through
the
your sign
small
up flow
scale, if you're starting
is
a
actually how
restaurant,
you differentiate
there may be
your
nothing, you're
business.
sort of
You're
creating
gonna
a
get
differentiated
people
product and
onto
people
your
can copy it, and
platform
you're just trying to
cheaper
build a
and
really good
faster
product.
and better than anybody
The
else.
thing
And that's kind of
to
a-
keep in mind,
that's why it's not a
particularly
great one,
venture
because everybody
capitalism, the
wants to do
model
that.
is to invest in.
Or you might decide that investing in your core
cool
product experience is actually more
Of the
important.
100
and you
companies
should
we'd
go grab
invested in, 10 of them
an
drive all
off-the-shelf
the
landing
returns.
page
So
tool.
when I look
where
at,
you should use
I mean, I'll just,
the
and
cheapest
I'll
thing
tell you
that
why
can
this
get
is
a
important to
hold
the
of.
moat, right?
Let me think about a better
20% of them
concrete
go to
example
zero.
because I could dig into my
The
business.
next
or I could
20%
talk a
of
little
them
bit about your
return
business.
0 to 1x.
But the
So you
highest
put,
level
you put $1 in and you get
is
$1
that
back.
I use the backbone
the top
example.
10%
We don't want to
return
differentiate
over
in
10x.
how we're
So you put
building
in
our security
$500,000
mechanisms
and you get
on the front end
$5
of a web
million.
application.
But actually,
Those
when you
aren't
look
baked
even in that
into
small
that
segment,
framework,
there are some
and
that
they
are
weren't at the
100x or
time. So we went and
150x.
decided
And
to
so
walk
when
away
we-
from our
the
single
reason why
page
that's
app
important is that
architecture
the
and
big
grab
winners
Rails
drive
back off the shelf
much,
because it's
if
very
not all of the
opinionated
return.
about how
And if
you
that's
should
the case,
apply
then we
security
always have
best
to ask at the
practices.
beginning
Now
the
we
question
spend
of,
a
okay,
heck of a lot
let's
less
just assume
time
this thing works.
thinking about that
Will other
because it's a
people,
part of
how
the
long will you
framework.
have an advantage so that you
Doing
can
that
become
in a
that really big
particular way,
company? And
different
that's
from
what
how
drives
you
the
might
question
do
of
it,
what's the moat.
isn't going to differentiate my business.
Thank you guys so much, and I'll be around here if you guys have
help?
any other questions.
I think that's it for
My
questions,
email, by the
but
way,
you'll be
is
around for answering
on
additional
there, but
questions.
I'm
Yeah,
not
I'll
beta
stick
works,
around for a
so
little bit.
please feel free
Dustin,
to
thank you
email
very
me if
much.
you have any follow-up questions.